Good evening, everyone, distinguished guests, scholars, my dear friends. On the behalf of Young Thinkers Forum, I, Mohit Rawal, take this privilege to welcome you all to this special evening dedicated to law, history, and written words. Today, we gather not merely for a book discussion, but for a conversation that sits at the intersection of legal process, civilizational memory, and institutional integrity. With heartfelt remembrance of Ma Veena Pani Vagadevi Saraswati, seeking her blessings for clarity in thoughts, purity in expression, and depth in understanding. We begin Young Thinkers Forum book discussion on Case for Ram, the Untold Insider's Story with the authors Shri Anirudh Sharma ji and Shri Sridhar Potaraju ji. We are deeply honored to have with us an eminent panel whose professional journeys reflect scholarship, advocacy, and public service at the highest level. First of all, I would like to give a brief introduction of Young Thinkers Forum and its vision. Ano bhadraha kratvo yantu vishwatah. Let the noble thoughts come from all the directions. If there has ever been a civilization which truly believes in the great and the auspicious idea and invite them from every nooks and the corners of the world, it is Bharat. Our tradition has always did aradhana of Vidya and Jnana, guided by the ideals such as Sangachadvam, Samvadadvam, Samvo Manansi Janatam. Move together, speak together, let your minds be in harmony. We have placed the pursuit of truth above all. This is why Bharat has long been known as Vishwaguru. Through dialogue, Samvad, we received the nectar of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. We received Upanishads and the intellectual clarity that leads humanity towards the truth. Today, as Bharat stands with its greatest strengths, the glorious knowledge heritage, and immense youth power, it becomes our responsibility to channelize this energy in the right direction. In an age where many movements and ideologies carry hidden agendas, it is essential that our youth are intellectually enriched and ideologically clear. Otherwise, confusion and exploitation become real dangers. So, keeping this in mind, Young Thinkers Forum is a platform where youth can engage in dialogue, contemplation, reflection, and teaching in the pursuit of truth. It promotes deep and healthy discussion free from distortions, free from propaganda, and driven not by the desire to win, but by the commitment to uncover the truth. This organization, Young Thinkers Forum, is based in Madhya Pradesh, headquartered in Bhopal, have a span pan-India through initiatives like book discussions, heritage walk, roundtable discussions, and many more. This vision is put into action. Today, we must resolve to unite Bharat's knowledge tradition with the limitless energy of youth to build a future that is beautiful, constructive, and illuminating for the entire world. Let us move forward with the phrase Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat, may the divine inspire and enlighten our intellect. Young Thinkers Forum welcomes you all in this event. Let us together participate in the yajna of dialogue, ideas, and knowledge and contribute to securing Bharat's glorious future. I would now request all present here to join me in welcoming our esteemed chief guest, our author of this book, Shri Anirudh Sharma ji and Shri Potaraju ji, on the stage. We are grateful that despite your demanding schedules, you have chosen to be with us today, sir. I now request our team member, Shaurya Mehra, to kindly felicitate our guest, Shri Anirudh Sharma, sir.
This is Maheshwari stole from Madhya Pradesh, also a GI tag. Welcome, sir.
I would request our esteemed member, Nirdesh ji, to please come and felicitate our speaker, Shri Sridhar Potaraju, sir. I would like to give a brief intro our speakers today of our guests. Shri Anirudh Sharma sir. He is an advocate on record practicing before the Supreme Court of India and practices before various high courts and tribunals. He did his bachelor's degree from Ramjas College, Delhi, and pursued LLB from Campus Law Center, University of Delhi. He was formerly part of the chambers of Shri K. Parasaran and has assisted him in several landmark cases. Beyond his legal practice, Sir is deeply passionate about India's civilizational heritage and preservation for its cultural legacy. Along with him, we have Shri Sridhar Potaraju, sir. Sir is Senior Advocate at Supreme Court of India, graduated with an LLB from Campus Law Center, University of Delhi, after completing his bachelor's from Osmania University. He has held several prestigious roles, including AOR at the Supreme Court since 2006 and more recently Senior Advocate since 2024. His professional experience includes working in eminent legal firms, practicing independently and appearing in prominent cases before the Supreme Court and various high courts, especially in constitutional, commercial, environmental and tax law. His first book, Maxims from Mahabharata, was published in 2022. He continues to explore and share the philosophical and cultural wisdom of India's ancient epics through his writings and lectures at his website, which is vadprativad.in. With this, we welcome you, sir. I would like to invite Shri Shaurya Mehraji to kindly set the tone for this discussion. Shaurya Mehraji is practicing advocate before the Chandigarh High Court, Punjab and Chandigarh High Court.
Thank you, Mohit. होई है सोई जो राम रची राखा को करी तर्क बरावे साखा. Whatever Shri Ram has ordained, that alone shall come to pass. No amount of logic or argument can alter that eternal truth. Jai Shri Ram and a very good evening. On behalf of Young Thinkers Forum Delhi, I warmly welcome you all to this book discussion. This evening is simply not about a verdict on paper. It is about a living civilizational memory that calls upon our youth to listen, to learn, and to take responsibility. On the 9th of November 2019, a Saturday, Ram Lalla finally received his legal rights after hearing that spanned 40 days, a moment that closed one chapter in the courtroom but opened a far wider conversation for the nation. The final judgment, running into about 1045 pages, discussed history, law, religion, and philosophy of Bharat. Anyone who is a critique of that 1045-page judgment is, I would submit, completely bereft of the truth. We are privileged to have with us the authors of the book, Case for Ram, and I speak with a personal sense of gratitude. As an intern and later as someone who continued to assist, I had the chance to support Mr. Anirudh Sharma sir, advocate on record in research and drafting of the book. I've watched him work on this book, which he has told me he has been doing since 2020, often after long court days. The long days and the longer nights that began with the Ram Janmabhoomi case preparations did not end with the final judgment for these two authors. They continued into the patient labor of assembling this work. This book maps the journey from the earliest contested moments, from the year 1528 to 1885, to the events of 1949, right to the final verdict. And it does so in a way that is not overly technical. Readers will find themselves on the edge of their seats, often because each chapter leaves a quiet suspense that urges one forward. One event which deserves special attention today is the excavations led by the Archaeological Survey of India and the painstaking work of archaeologists like the young K.K. Mohammed back then, along with B.B. Lal, revealing the layers reaching back centuries, evidencing that Ayodhya is a civilizational site with continuity going back to 200 BCE. As Mr. K.K. Mohammed has shown that professional courage matters, he stood by the evidence despite fierce criticism from the left, even from scholars he once respected, even his own teacher, Mr. Irfan Habib. Let me also acknowledge a truth the book confronts directly. For decades, certain historians aligned with the Marxist ideology have, in pursuance of their ideological ends, done a great disservice to India's civilizational record. That its civilizational battle was fought in courts and in public debate. It now inspires a new generation of young advocates and scholars, including the people sitting here, to stand for evidence, for context, and for our roots. Finally, we must also remember that our civilizational treasures are not merely sentimental relics. They are resources for engagement, scholarship, and even sustainable economic opportunities. People travel from across the globe to go and see the Colosseum or the Great Pyramids. We possess an even older, richer civilizational fabric. If our youth do not connect with it intellectually and practically through fields like heritage tourism or yoga or Ayurveda, others will occupy that space and often without context or care. Jai Shri Ram. I now invite my dear friend Aditya to take us forward.
Thank you, Shaurya. Thank you, Mohit ji, for leading us. Thank you, sir, Sridhar sir, Anirudh sir, for accepting our invite. And let's start. We'll keep a fireside chat format. We all are young here. So the new format has been fireside. We are seeing around the world. And one question each to our speaker, and after that we'll open it for audience. Before that, I just wish to express that why are we here? This book has been launched before, this book has been discussed before. But we wish to discuss it with the audience who might not be only from law, who are also from other non-law areas, civilizational background. We also acknowledge members of India Habitat Center who are present here, and also people who have been connected to Young Thinkers Forum. I can see familiar faces, I can see new faces. But now, from today onwards, we all are a family, and when we discuss this, thankfully when we are discussing this, the authors as well as the moderator both have the book, so we won't be speaking anything apart from what is necessary, and which is good. And we all are lawyers on the panel, and I'm very young, and I would first apologize in case if I make any mistake. Sir, Anirudh sir, we start with you. Very important term that we see in this book is cause lawyering. That this case has been termed, and in the series of cause lawyering, this case has been one of the very important cases, and maybe obviously the most important case of your careers. You have been Mr. K. Parasiran sir's own student. We would love to know about his trade and craft, starting with this, so that young lawyers, young people present here would know about a statesman, a legal statesman, which will also inspire young lawyers, young generation present here. We would also love to know how you got involved in this case.
How I got involved in the case? First, thanks for having us here. I got involved in the case because I was a student of Mr. Parasiran, and he was kind enough to let me work in some landmark cases out of the many that he did. Mr. Parasiran was fully committed, as always, to any case that he would do. And cause lawyering here means whenever he would do a case which has deep social impact, since as a believer, any temple would come to him for rescue or for any help or for any legal issues. He would not charge a single penny if the temple is struggling, or if he has faith in the temple, or in many cases also when he is totally unconnected with the temple. But that did not mean even for a second that those cases were not done properly. In fact, in those cases, he would put an extra mile so that the clients are fully taken care of. And at 92, he was doing this case for, last 1 year, he was preparing. He was preparing for the last 10 years, but preceding the case for last 1 year, this was the only thing that he was involved in, reading, rereading again. And it takes a lot of courage, personality, grit to get over health issues, because old age itself can bring a lot of problems in your normal life. This is common sense. I need not expand on that. To get over everything, focus and work hours and hours, lose midnight sleep, get up early in the morning. Right, too. This is unheard of. This is one of these stories. Just imagine a person gets up to do one of the most important, bulky, and challenging cases ever in the history of the country. First thing he gets up in the morning and does is put his dentures, the artificial teeth. Then he puts the hearing aids. Then, of course, those heavy spectacles. Then he finds a stick for himself to walk. And then comes and encounters a brief of, say, 40,000, 50,000 pages. And he's fully committed to it. He knows each and every page by heart from his memory. And that's the sort of commitment that Mr. Parasiran had. And all this as a matter of submission to his God and as a matter of submission to the interest of the country. So that is what was cause wiring all about.
Thank you, sir. We'll get back to you and would like to know further about the case, the intricacies of it, the evidence involved, and other things. Sridhar, sir, let me come to you. First, let us know how was your first impression about when you were involved in this case, how you got involved, and what was your first impression? Because you have mentioned this before as well, that you have been a student of commerce, you were into commercial litigation, how you got involved into a constitutional or a civil law dispute, because a lot of us know this case in a different manner, but when the authors who were also the lawyers would speak, would call it a civil law dispute. We'll come to that. Sir, also, since this verdict, we see a dynamic shift in our perspective towards civilizational ecosystem, and especially Hindu temples, reconstruction, identification of lost temples, etc. How do you see this? Do you see an awakening, or do you believe that our eyes were closed?
Uh, Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here. See, if I have to speak about the civilizational awakening moment to start with, definitely to appear for Ram Bhumi was not a fanciful thing. Most of the people I've heard later were very reluctant to even be identified with this cause in the profession. So it was a surprise for me. But I also understood the context because your political environment defines your priorities and your preferences. So now to appear for temples or causes of religion or Sanatan Dharma is definitely now a thing of pride that we can see across in our society. But we are talking about times when it was actually a taboo and nothing short of probably getting ostracized. So this case has survived that kind of an socio-political and environment, and not to speak of any other place, including the bar itself. In that background, my association with the case, as a member of the bar, I was aware this case was being worked on, and in 2010 the appeals were getting drafted. I heard the appeals being prepared, etc. But I had no inclination or any interest in the matter per se in 2010 when the appeals were filed here, except that a lot of people used to go into the court hall, and then we need to wait for our turn to enter the court hall after this matter was over. And later in 2017, I got associated with this case thanks to Parasranji prodding me, and then probably when you're ready, the Guru arrives is the belief in our system. So the Guru probably felt I was ready for a cause lawyering, and then he, in his own way, had me into this brief. And then I realized that by then Anirudh, Mr. P.V. Yogeshwaran, Bhaktivardhan Singh, and several others were working for almost 5-6 years or 8 years or 10 years on the brief after it had reached Supreme Court. So for me, it was a very difficult call to see what role can I play at this belated stage when the matter had already reached final hearing stage. So probably my role there became more of legal strategy and managing the logistics of a big hearing. As an advocate on record, as I was around that time, had good experience of handling very heavy matters. So probably that's what Parasran sir felt, that the core team needed someone with that kind of an experience to manage a large litigation and the logistics associated with it. When I speak of logistics, what happens is in a final hearing of this scale, where thousands of pages are part of the court record, you are actually preparing written arguments and then compilations, etc. So when they get finalized in the 11th hour, like virtually stop, press, and then you again correct and then change. So all of them needs to be printed and copies prepared and then be ready by 10 in the morning. So that was the challenge that we had. And so my office became the logistical backend. So we used to work overnights to get these things moving. Apart from several others in the courts, our colleagues in the bar, who were all contributing, and there was always a sharing of the responsibilities happening. But that's how I got in. And then also because of my own interest in civilizational issues, I had started cloning Mr. Parasran's library, to say so. So therefore, several issues that used to crop up during the course of the hearing, he would bounce it off to me, and it was my responsibility to access that material, to run it through and see if it can be or used in the case in any form, or otherwise we would like to examine it and explore and then live. Like research and development, most often than not, many of the things that you explore may not lead to any consequence, but you have to go through the process. So I used to play that role as much in addition to the legal part.
Right, sir. Anirudh sir, we saw that in this case, and later we also want Sridhar sir your inputs on this because it's a very important issue. And when this issue was there, whole country was debating on it. And I could also hear in your previous discussions that how media reported this case opened a lot of, let's say, Pandora's box of how Supreme Court works, and that still happens. We are still not happy with how public thinks of us as lawyers or in judiciary. But this case saw God, God as is God had a counsel in this matter, and we have a section in this book, section 1, which says God's own lawyer, and referring to Mr. Parasaran, and also the team. So the team was of 60 lawyers, and along with all the administrative staff as well. Additionally, this case saw God Ram Lalla Virajman himself as a party, as a petitioner to this matter. In this, a chapter is also titled, as I mentioned. How was this manifested? How was this necessitated? And what all discussions were going on in the team? We would love to know more about.
Mr. Parasan is actually God's own lawyer. He has been part of so many temple litigations, saving the temples, sometimes from within, sometimes from outside. And his continued faith and devotion is what characterizes his life. And of course, I mean, you cannot become God's own lawyer without the God willing it.
Right. Absolutely.
So the only lawyer who was God's own lawyer was Mr. Parasan, and of course Mr. Vaidyanathan, the senior counsels, Mr. Ranjit Kumar and Mr. P.S. Narasimha, as he was on that day, the 4 senior counsels. So these comprised the God's own lawyers, of course led by Mr. Parasaran, because he had the maximum experience and stature as far as this was concerned. Now the discussions within the team was quite open, and because it was quite open, it could also be quite heated. There was freedom of speech and expression for everyone. There were differences. The reason for being that you have been trained to always be apologetic when you are talking about your faith, however good or reasonable you are talking about. So when the issue of juristic person came, there was division in the team, because one part of the team, fully committed to the case, believed that we should stick to secular property law notions and not go into religious practices and beliefs, how they pan out. Another segment of the team believed that since this is a case about evidence which flows from practice of religion, so every religious practice and every argument connected with that should be used. So there was a lot of differences within the team on point of juristic person, whether land, Janmabhoomi should be juristic person or not, and there were divisions. However, as the case progressed, those bitter division, I may rather say, I mean, no harm in saying that when we discuss it to the fullest extent. That is how, you intellectually debate a topic. Those differences started narrowing down, and finally we all agreed which paths to take. But yes, there were divisions in the team, there were heated discussions, and thankfully those happened because, it helped also to, focus our arguments better. And while discussing about this case, we also realized that this case is about the idea of India and the history of India. Ram Janmabhoomi is not only about a particular religion. It's how we look at India, what is the idea of India as seen by Indians living in India, not by Indians sitting somewhere else and talking about India. And what India is below the earth and also what India is above the earth. Because in a country where talking about and brandishing your religion was not very encouraged, as Mr. Potaraju said, and you are not supposed to even wear a thread to the school. Coming and leading such movements, those who did it over the period of times, they deserve actual credit. And finally, thankfully, the whole country got together and we have the result of it presently in Ayodhya.
Right, so thank you so much for pointing out this, that how discussions were had their freedom of expression in the team, because it was a very big team. When I saw the names, and you must know how these things were going on back, midnight discussions or late night calls. And then I also read in one book that you emailed to senior Parasan at 4 a.m. I don't think were you sleeping that time during the case?
See, many of the team members for many days
Right.
may have had a schedule which is not very hospitable to human life, but that's part of every lawyer's life. Every
Yes,
lawyer,
in a
whether
way.
in this case or in other case, is found working late nights, sometimes overnight. That's part of the profession life.
Yes, sir. Sir, Sridhar sir, there's a thing that when we do something and which is very important as a case as this, we must be thinking in our mind, we wish to know from you, like, what was going on in your mind that time? Was there a moment during the hearings? Because we always think, okay, this case is important, we need to win it. You might be thinking, oh, this case has to be a landmark case, the most important case of Supreme Court or your career. Was there a moment during the hearings when you sensed that this is the turning point, can go against us, can go in favor of us? Anything that you remember from the hearings?
See, as trained professionals, like sportsmen do, we win some, we lose some. So we are focusing more on our preparation, our presentation, and then also responding to the live hearings as questions crop up from the bench or interjection from our side or the other side. So it is a very holistic process as professionals that we undertake. In that process, there are tense moments, there are anxious moments as much, as well as there are situations where you know that this is part of the game, and then you keep focusing on the next step or the next plan that we have already charted out in our course of preparation. So the detachment from the outcomes is a primary training that all of us have as professionals in any profession that we participate in or act in, because we need to be on our toes, alive in the moment, to actually respond to a situation as it arises and bring in our professional expertise or experience to deal with the situation. So, one of the stellar moments for me in this entire hearing of 40 days was a moment where, in the course of the arguments from the other side, a statement was made that in the context of the demolition in 92 and the wrong being done, etc. So it was said that once it's a masjid, it's always a masjid. So at that moment, the bench hearing the other side just paused, and they looked at Mr. Parasran and then they said, Mr. Parasran, what do you have to say? Now they're saying that once it's a masjid, it's always a masjid. So for me personally, it was like a moment where your heart stops. Now, what would be an answer for such a profound question in an intense hearing? So, you can't really prepare for such questions which happen in a live hearing. So, Mr. Parasran, with his experience, wisdom, and probably being the chosen man himself, very feebly got up. I vividly remember that moment. He feebly got up, stood up, and looked at the bench in a very respectful manner, said, once a temple, always a temple, and sat down. So that defines this hearing.
Beautiful.
That defines the hearing for the reason that was the crux of the contest between the parties. Because in Islam, a dedication to Allah is a permanent dedication. It cannot be reversed. Similarly, in Hindu pantheon, the Sanatana Dharma, a temple built with or without an idol. When I say with or without an idol, this is on the basis of judgments in UK and recognized even in Canadian courts. Okay, and this is not something which you are coming from any religious texts or scriptures alone. Is always continues to have that divinity in it. So in that sense, our faith of this place being a Janmasthan, because for us, I'm not proficient or familiar with Sanskrit. There are several slokas in various scriptures where we worship Bhudevi, Mother Earth. And I've known people who actually, before waking up or getting up and putting their feet on the earth, have a prayer to offer to Mother Earth, seeking apology that I'm putting my feet on you. So therefore, earth itself is a place of worship for us. And the Janmasthan being a place chosen by Ram himself becomes more sacred for us. See, for us as a society, even a modern society, if you see, there are places. In fact, the other day I was stuck on the ITO bridge for 1.5 hours on 30th January in the morning because people were going to pay their respects in Rajghat. So, what is the significance of that place or the places next to it? What is the significance? Why do we actually hold up traffic? Why do people and dignitaries from abroad go there and pay their respect? If you look at it purely from a social or a secular perspective also, every place or some places at least have very great significance for the community. So Ram's Janmasthan definitely had that kind of a reverence and actually sacredness associated with it for centuries, in spite of all the attacks which have happened on people who were seeking to worship there. So I think this is the profound nature of this discourse that was happening in a court of law, in an appeal which was being heard after 60 years of the original litigation commencing, and probably in the 70th year of its pendency in courts, that this issue was being debated and is being engaged with, where the entire nation and world was trying to understand the implications and then get exposed to what was the core battle all about.
Yes, sir. And when we read in the book that about Ram Janmabhoomi, Mr. Parasaran also points out that after so long years, it's difficult to maybe put a needle to that area, but we can identify an area, and obviously in the judgment also we see that an area was identified, and through texts, many texts, ancient texts, and all the evidences, this was propounded that how that area is only Ram Janmabhoomi and not any other city or any other area. Coming to that, one thing I'll just take your input on, Sridhar sir. You also mentioned in one of the podcasts before that while taking back, while receiving Mr. Parasan from the airport on the day of judgment, you asked him that what do you feel, what would happen? And Mr. Parasaran answers that, sir, would you like to take that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, see, as far as Sanatan is concerned, it is an inclusive way of life. It doesn't exclude anyone by birth. So therefore, we need to have some conceptual clarities before we can actually have clarity of expression is what I believe. And then that belief has come from my exposure to Sri Parasaranji. I was like any other English medium, convent educated, urban citizen who chose a profession because of its vacations to have a good life. So, and when I get into this matter and then my interaction with Parasaran sir over 2 decades prior to this case itself, I realized that there are certain values which are very ingrained in our civilization and culture of inclusiveness, of seeing an Atma in every living and non-living being. So that's part of our itihasas. If anyone has read any of our Ramayana or Mahabharata, you will get to see anecdotes and anecdotes of Atma, of a God being seen in any form. So if that be the belief system, there is no other. Because for us, each is a part of the larger. So if it is in that sense that when I look at this question that I did ask him, when he had reached the Delhi airport and then we were driving to the Supreme Court, out of curiosity, I mean, you have the tendency to second guess what can happen, kya hoga. I was asking because my experience with him is that man is like got insight. See, people who have their skin in the game can actually read the room, as they would say. So we could see, I mean, having been part of the hearings, with his experience, he would have an insight as to what can come out of it. So when I asked him, sir, what do you think will be the judgment today? He very thoughtfully and then very consciously said something coming from full faith that he had in his Ram. He said, nobody will go empty-handed from my Ram's house. So therefore, I mean, the reason I prefaced this answer of quoting what Sir said with the basic identity or understanding of Sanatan is that there is no other for us. So for Ram, everyone is his own. So therefore, nobody will go empty-handed means that there is no other, which is a very unique feature of Abrahamic faiths, the heathens or kafirs on the basis of acceptance or rejection of a particular form of worship or faith. So that's a very alien concept. So therefore, blasphemy, etc., are unknown to Sanatan or Bharatvarsha, the way we look at it. So these are the core things we need to understand when we engage in any discourse on any temple or any place of worship that a Sanatan or a Hindu is seeking to reclaim. Because what he is reclaiming in the form is not merely a place, but a recognition of a civilizational value of inclusiveness, which has been rejected by a form of worship or a faith which labels people who don't accept as kafirs or heathens. So that is the core of this discourse that I would say.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for highlighting on this. Anirudh, sir, when we see this case, there's a lot of factual metrics involved, a lot of evidence involved. And there was a judgment in your favor from Allahabad High Court also. But then there were disagreements to that judgment, which you can tell us, because the property were to be divided into 3 parts. And there were some other grounds of appeal also. We would like to know first about the factual metrics of this case. Such a long historical case, it must have been a Herculean task. This may not have involved only lawyers, but also historians, archaeologists, people from other fraternity. How was all this going on according to you? What do you say?
See, the factual matrix of this case was like, which never happened. It was unlike any other case in the whole world. For the first time ever, the factual matrix stretched from the first millennia BC to the present day. But we can divide it into phases from the first millennia BC to 1528, when Babur is supposed to have come there and would have sent Mir Baki to destroy the structure there and erect on the top of the structure 3 domes without changing the structure. Because the pillars existed before 1528 and the pillars continued to exist after that with Hindu figurines and Hindu symbols being present. The second phase could be 1528 to 1857, where the evidence of Christian travelers, the European travelers, was all present. They all identified this place as the Janmsthan and continued reverence and people coming on special days like Ram Navami to offer their prayers to Lord Ram. The third phase could be from 1857 onwards to, we can say, 1934. This phase is crucial because the British have entered, they are the rulers. They have erected an iron railing to divide the premises into 2. However, in 1870, P. Carnegie, who was posted as the officiating commissioner and settlement officer, writes that this is the place where too much of rush is there on days like Ram Navami. That's what he indicates. And in 1877, the British administrators decide to open a new door in that premises itself. And when a new door is sought to be opened, through judicial process, it is thought to be stopped. That please don't open this door. This is not a Hindu worship place. But that door is allowed to be opened because in 1877 there was so much rush at the Ram Janmabhoomi. So you have to ask yourself, is it a political issue, modern political issue, or is it an issue of 1877 when people from all over are coming to visit the place and there is virtually a threat of stampede? Then in 1885, in the factual matrix, we find another case being filed where the English judges are writing that this is the Janmabhoomi, and it is really unfortunate that a bigot in 1885 destroyed such a place of reverence. Before that, you even had travelers like William Finch Thyler through the 16th century, through the 17th century, like 1608 and 1611, 1611, and then in the 17th century, like 1760s, passing through it and identifying the place as the birthplace of Lord Ram. So the factual matrix and the evidence was overwhelming, pointing over to one direction. And then in 1885, there was a judicial order stating that this is the Ram Janmabhoomi, and it's unfortunate that Babur came, the bigot came and destroyed this place, but unfortunately nothing can be done now because 350 years have passed. And because that was a suit of a different nature, this finding was given, and we did not have the constitution and the modern laws. Then move forward. It is now argued in independent India that there was an alternative place of birth of Lord Ram somewhere else, 150 meters somewhere, east, west, south, whatever. Right? After conceding to the fact that in 1885, even judicially, by the Britishers, this was identified, this whole composite area was identified as the Ram Janmabhoomi. So the factual matrix is very interesting, which has not been communicated to the country as such. That was also one of the reasons that we wrote this book, because in the manner that I have spoken, the media could not get this factual matrix.
Right, sir. And when we see this matter, it's not just professional services of a lawyer being rendered. It was faith was involved, emotions were also involved, as we see from the top counsels. I read that Mr. Vaidyanathan used to keep his shoes away while arguing. This was also mentioned in the book, and we saw the dedication of Mr. Parasan, how he dedicated, and he was all throughout, I think, 40 days of hearing, when 40 days, the whole 40 days this hearing went on, and he argued for around 16 hours. Obviously with periods, and whenever this side was arguing. So this is inspirational in a way. Sridhar sir, I wish to ask you that this book, while writing this book has been written in a manner that does not attack any side. This book tells our side of the story, Ramlala's team that you were all part of. What do you say about this, and your mannerism of contributing to this book in this fashion? Not attacking anyone, we are telling our story.
See, there's no question of attacking anyone. See, the process in a court of law is the pursuit of truth. So there is no attack against anyone, it except untruth. It's as simple as it, isn't it? Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya.
Yes.
So when you're pursuing truth, which is light, you have to dispel darkness. So the process of dispelling darkness does not necessarily be a process of verbose or probably any kind of an aggression. The process of ascertaining truth or presenting the truth as we see it was the idea in writing the book in a very factual manner. And though we both were primarily part of the whole thing, instead of putting it in our own words, we chose to footnote the book with multiple references, in fact, almost 300 plus footnotes of documents, news reports, stories published in various articles in multiple places during those 40 days of hearings. Apart from the pleadings and the judgment itself, extracts are referred extensively as the basis of this book. The reason being, truth needs to be actually told, and it was our responsibility, I think, being part of the team, to bring to light the complex issues that were debated in a very objective manner. What happens, I think, is that all faiths actually are adherents to truth. There is no faith that I can understand or think of which actually denies truth. So therefore, there is no confrontation, because this is a dispute about a place of worship between different faith, people of different faith. So the only people who are actually allergic to truth were the ones we did expose, the Marxists, because it's opium for them, faith. So therefore, we had to expose their worldview being contrary to the worldviews of the people of faith. So when I say this, 1950, several residents of Ayodhya, Muslim residents, had given affidavits about there's no significance being associated with the place for them as a place for worship. Because they said that we have 30 or 40 mosques available in Ayodhya and this has no significance, which was restated again in the final hearing, even in the Supreme Court. So therefore, 70 years later, the stand, insofar as the Muslim side was concerned, that this place has no significance of religious importance for them, except that a gentleman had built it. That's the only claim that they were asserting all through. And several witnesses, Muslim witnesses, vouched on oath the truth about the faith of the Hindu worshippers, pilgrimages, for decades to come and worship there. So therefore, so far as truth is concerned, all sides were on the same side. As far as the existence of faith that this place was Janmastan for the Hindus. Only people who were differing were the people who were passing off what I would now call it as the Marxist mythology as Indian history.
Right. So you have also mentioned that they were intellectually dishonest, which we'll come to later. Anirudh sir, we see that litigation surrounding temples, civilizational issues, it has been growing now. After, like sir mentioned previously, that now it is a matter of pride. At that time, it was a matter of, because I think when matter came, started in courts during Allahabad High Court, there was a different socio-economic environment in this country as well. I was in school. And then now we see that the socio-economic environment and also political environment is pro-civilization in a way that youth is also very charged up with civilizational issues. I remember that when this judgment came up, I was in my law school, and then I could see everyone celebrating and all that. And also we wish to understand, and now this question is as a citizen, because a citizen of this country is very emotional. He sees things through faith. He would expect that, oh, there's a temple, it should be worshipped, it should be a temple. But then we see that there might be civil disputes around that corner and such issues. And when these cases come to lawyers and judges, obviously we see it through evidence, through legal lens, and through all the procedural and substantive issues. But what would a citizen do in such a case? Because they have their emotions attached to their place. Whether court allows the decision in their favor or not, they would still believe. And there are many cases like that. Plethora of cases going on in this country right now. How would you like to comment that? What do you see the future of civilizational litigation?
Our civilization was suppressed. That's not something unknown. But how was it suppressed? Some people got degrees and said whatever we say is the truth. But when they were confronted in court of law, how did they react is the question. Who were declared as historians and archaeologists and experts on ancient India. In our book at page 203, you will find something very interesting, which was not captured in any public, a book or any public writing as descriptively. So there was a report given by the 4 historians, top historians of their time.
No, eminent.
Eminent, top. Some were professor emeritus, some were living legends of their time. And they gave a report saying that there's nothing to show that any temple existed or anything. So when they were called for cross-examination, one of them, they were asked, did everyone sign the report? Did everyone take the ownership? Not everyone signed the report. Then they were asked, did you all visit even Ayodhya? The answer was no, we did not even visit Ayodhya. Third question was, did you all, see any archaeological report or have any, knowledge of archaeology? The answer was no, we have no knowledge of archaeology. One of them, who acted as an expert and had degrees in Sanskrit, was tested with Sanskrit. Can you speak Sanskrit? No, I have not spoken for a long time, so I cannot speak. All right, then can you read Sanskrit? No, I have not read for a long time, so I cannot read. So if you cannot speak, if you cannot read, then what do you do beyond propaganda? The answer was nothing. Right, so this historian's report was thrown into the dustbin by the Allahabad High Court, where it actually belonged to. As Mr. Potaraju said, the Marxist mythology was thrown into the dustbin by Allahabad High Court. And the Supreme Court also refused to give any respect to it. It was respectfully stripped off of all its respect. This is what we would say. So this is the civilizational change and the change of perspective happening in India. We ought to look at our things how it is and not what one ideology or propaganda wants us to look at. This propaganda mechanism was dominant for a very long period of time. But fortunately, today's youth is aware that they don't that they don't deserve the respect which they claimed through such machinations for a very long period of time. Because if you become an expert in the field without knowing the basics, if you don't know any ancient Indian languages, if you have not been part of any archaeological excavation, if you have not been part of, things like this through which you understand ancient India through primary texts, then what are you? You are relying on secondary and tertiary sources, and you are just being a copycat. So your own understanding is zero. Then you take from those people who are colonizers, those people who have their own agenda and worldview, which is totally different from India, because they may have a nation state. Today's youth is finally seeing a civilizational state. One of the leading journalists, Neerja Chaudhary, of Indian Express, I heard one of her interviews in one of the podcasts. She was saying that long time ago when she used to go to Varanasi, there were 20,000, 30,000, whatever, 80,000 people at max, very limited people for a Ganga Aarti. Today, you see lakhs of people for Ganga Aarti at Varanasi. It's not that faith was not there earlier. The faith was subdued. One, through it not being cool. The second, through it being, why are you, so much of ritualistic or not, why are you totally into faith? Because people believed that faith doesn't heal. The placebo effect research by the Harvard Medical School, as of now, proves that faith heals. It heals for many people as much as a medicine itself through chemical reactions. So faith is a big healer, faith is a big unifier. Our civilizational development has been through science and spirituality and faith, all combined together. There has been inquiry not about the material but also about the non-material aspect of life. There has been inquiry about substance as well as non-substance aspect of life, in which science, faith and spirituality have been the cornerstones. That is why we have survived. Mahatma Gandhi in Hind Swaraj says that civilization crumbled, but why did we survive? Because India was religious, India believed in faith, and the day India stops believing in faith, India would be destroyed. And what we are seeing today is a resurgent India, an India which is developing its cultural ethos, civilizational ethos, scientific ethos. Now yoga is scientific. Right? Our old temples, our old designs, Rameshwaram temple, built when was it built? Just look at the symmetry, just look at the scientific architecture, just look at the tenacity, just look at the longevity. Does it come without science? Our scientific developments, many of them are engraved in our temples. Today, Vedic chanting is cultural heritage of the world declared by United Nations. Is it only faith? It's also cultural heritage. There's a lot more in our faith than faith simplicity, including science, architecture, technology, and the cultural heritage of the humankind itself may be in our faith and in our civilization.
Thank you, sir, for putting it so beautifully. Also, there are certain, when we read a book, we have our own bookmarks, as we can see in your book as well. In my part, I have my favorite phrases, quotes, etc. I'm reading one of them, then I'll put a question to you, Sridhar sir.
Okay.
This is on how Mr. Parasaran argued, and from one of his arguments I'm just reading. Ram was born in Ayodhya. First, he stated that he must establish the nature of the deity, Lord Ram, and the relevant history of events. Parasaran submitted that the spirit of Lord Ram is present at Janmabhoomi and can be experienced by those who pray there, reasoning that the presence of an idol is not necessary for the presence of a deity. On the issue of whether Ram was born at Ayodhya, he submitted that Valmiki's Ramayana states that Lord Ram's place of birth is Ayodhya. He further submitted that what has to be proven is that the custom of worshipping at the site has existed for a significant number of years. He added that the unshakable faith of millions of believers is itself evidence. This is so beautifully argued on how the evidence of worshippers of a faith can also be seen in this case. Sir, I have two questions to you, very frank questions, and we are into a very frank, blunt conversation on a lot of issues. First is, do you feel as a citizen maybe that our agencies, archaeological survey and other agencies, are doing justice to our civilization? What is your own perspective about it? Maybe as a citizen, if you do not want to comment on it officially. Second, how do you see that youth of this country should be motivated towards understanding civilization by also actually reading our ancient scriptures? Not calling them mythological scriptures, our ancient scriptures, which were, like, for example, if we talk about Bhagavad Gita, it was given to us directly by the God. Lord Krishna. And same applies to Valmiki Ramayana when we have so many excerpts from the God who is teaching us values of life. So how youth can be motivated? Now, what is your take on agencies?
See, the agencies, as you rightly label them, are controlled by their principles. So, therefore, the leash is in the control of the principal. And the principal being the government in power or the people who actually ask for these agencies to perform their statutory obligations. So, therefore, as long as the vigilant citizenry, the sovereign in the collective, is vigilant and then makes these institutions work, they do work. And in fact, it is the Archaeological Survey of India's report which has actually decided this issue once for all on very scientifically done excavations. So I think our agencies have been doing their job as long as they've been allowed to do their job. And there were instances when they were hijacked, and which was also exposed in this case, of publications being made by certain institutions without any credible material which is acceptable in their branch of learning or practice. Now, I mean, the second limb, I think we as a citizenry, we need to probably ask ourselves, we look around, the names that we have at home, it's either Shiva or Vishnu or one of those relatives. So therefore, we have some common ancestry of the Trinity whose names or whose their family names that we actually have as our own names. So Anirudh, Sridhar, we are all part of Vishnu Sahasranam. Aditya. So I think everyone's name has a significance, and that significance is what we missed out. We took them as labels, like we put probably on a library or book in a library, or probably the labels we put here on a woodwork. We forgot the essence of those identities and their significance for us. We are a civilization which has actually experienced life by questioning. So we are a citizenry of seekers for hundreds and thousands of years. So we have a tradition of debates which is very intricate techniques which are actually documented and unfortunately kept out of reach for most of the English educated, because it's in Sanskrit. So what has happened is, my firm belief is post-independence, unlike Japan or probably China, who were not disconnected from their civilizational roots, a deliberate attempt was made to disconnect us from our civilizational roots by becoming apes, trying to ape the West. And that has miserably failed. And our civilizational roots thrived and existed amongst the illiterate and those who were not swayed by the West. So what happens is that the culture and traditions continued and they were practiced at home, but they were not in the public space or in academic space, as I would say. So that difference is what probably now merging. I started reading about this as much. Therefore, I can say this, in 1950s, one of the publications that I read about disharmonies, C. Rajgopalachari's publication on Hindu thought, he says that Sanatana Dharma is the only dharma where you don't have to believe one thing in your religion or faith and another thing when it comes to science. There are no two different truths which cannot coexist in Sanatana Dharma. Therefore, we engage in a question-answer format of exchange of ideas in pursuit of truth, which is science. So, Upanishadic knowledge about astrology, astronomy is something which has evolved through exchange of ideas, questioning and finding answers. So, I think a civilization or a citizenry which is rootless is always bound to be manipulated or probably guided in a manner that the person in control would choose to. Our continuity of Kathavachaks, etc., have kept our civilizational memories alive of our itihasas. So I think Ramayana or Mahabharata as a itihasa, apart from the Upanishads, etc., are some things which have been elevated to a state of a religious text, which I personally believe should be actually read more as biographies of the times that the authors documented them. Valmiki was a part of Ramayana. Vedavyasa was part of Mahabharata. Now, if you look at them as itihasa, the history that happened on this land, and you see the characters' human traits, be it Rama, Sita, or Hanumanji, or Ravana or Duryodhana. All these characters are human traits that we are familiar with amongst our society in the contemporary times. So when you read these kind of itihasas, you are equipped to deal with complex human beings, and you also have a choice of decision making which comes through clarity of understanding of the sense of right and wrong, which is evaluated on the space of dharma and satya as the yardsticks of their being segregated in these itihasas. So people who have adhered to satya and dharma are the people who today we worship, and the people who have not adhered to satya and dharma are the people we actually abhor. And then every Dashara there is a 10-headed monster who's actually burnt alive, right, or symbolically burnt to ashes. So therefore, I think it's very important that we go beyond the symbolism and understand the nuances of dharma and satya, which is what Sanatana Dharma is all about, and not an empty ritual itself. It is something much more than the rituals which are very critical and essential for sustaining certain practices.
Right, sir. Thank you so much. And in this verdict and during the arguments, and by the way, these arguments have been documented, and there are portals who have stored it. It is also available on Supreme Court Observer. Sir has also mentioned it on his website. There were very important questions, and then I come to you, sir. That Senior Parasar and Mr. Vaidyanathan prepared the following very important points related to our civilization. And civilization is a bigger umbrella. First, what or who is that Hindus worship? Second, in how many ways can there be manifestations of the divine as per Hindu thought, belief, and practice? Third, what can be called a temple? Can there be a place of worship for Hindus without a temple or even a building? Fourth, what is the purpose and position of an idol or an image of a deity in Hindu thought? Fifth, when does an idol or deity get destroyed? Can it be destroyed at all? Sixth, whose interest is it to be protected by protecting an idol or a temple? I would like you to answer some of these questions, maybe in easy fashion for our non-law audience. And also after that, these are very important jurisprudential topics or civilizational topics, but whatever you can. And secondly, after that, I would ask you, and after that we close it, and then we ask our audience to interact with us, that if a young law student is understanding this book, then there is a lot of mechanism for them to understand how a case is being crafted, how a case is being drafted, how a case is being argued. I would also like you to speak on that. Too many questions.
Yes. First of all, where all can divinity exist? Divinity exists for the benefit of the faithful, of the worshipper. The ultimate aim of divine is to look after the human beings, and the ultimate aim of human beings is to pray to the divine. That is what the relation between the God and the worshipper is. Now I have been asked what all can be places of Hindu religious worship, or where they can believe what can be temples or not. Though he's asking all the professional secrets, but still I'll answer that. God can exist even in vacuum. Suppose we have Lord Shiva's worshipper, and he worships Shiva in form of Panch Tattva: air, fire, land, water, right? So, God is omnipresent in all the 5 elements, and everything is made out of elements. That is what the test of Narsimha was. When Lord Narsimha came, he came out from material, not as a human being, not as a tiger, but as manifestation of everything. And his message, that the conversation that took place between the God and the Bhakta to Prahlad was that, see me everywhere. And Prahlad refused to see him, see the world without his Lord. And Prahlad refused to heed to his father that don't see God everywhere. Just look at God at me. So God is omnipresent. God can even be in vacuum. That is why in the Chidambara temple in Tamil Nadu, you just worship a space. So God can also be space. So this is the, articulation of, if it is possible to articulate, God in Hindu thought. that God can be even in vacuum, God can even be in fire, God can even be in a temple, God can even be outside temple. That is why you don't necessarily need a temple to worship God. And when God chooses to land at one particular piece of land, He confers divinity on that land. The land does not confer divinity to God. So that is how you identify the places of worship. That is why Ram Janmabhoomi becomes so special, because God chose that this land is the only land where I can come down. So God can be everywhere. A temple can be even without building. There can be a temple without any, what you call, idol. We have idol worshippers in Hinduism, non-idol worshipper in Hinduism, worshipper of cow in Hinduism, worshipper of rivers in Hinduism, worshipper of Aditya, as we see him
It's a sun god.
in Hinduism, worshipper of Sridhar in Hinduism, right? I mean, to put it appropriately, Lord Vishnu in Hinduism. So the width is huge. So Mr. Parasan, as a strategy as to what can be, why land can be juristic person, just cited one judgment and stayed back for the other side to argue. The other side, through one of the most respected and learned counsels in the country, Dr. Dhawan, gave instances that there can be a temple of bullet, there can be a temple where rats are worshipped, there can be various temples where space is worshipped. So, wherever the divinity manifests in whatever form, for Hindus can be God. It said, Anu Anu Paramatma. So that is the width. And the worship of the faith and the worshippers give evidence in the form of practice of their faith of that place. For example, in non-idol worshipper can be a follower of Ram. Ram as a lived life, Ram as Maryada Purushottam is not subject to an idol. He can also be found in an idol. But for those non-idol worshippers of Lord Ram, they don't need a temple. They don't need an idol. That is why it can be argued that land can also be a juristic person if there is some element or some manifestation or some, even a small, indication in any form of God being present there, both material as well as non-material.
Right, sir. I close this by asking a very controversial question, which was also asked to a judge, also on this bench, with this verdict only. To both of you, one by one, you can answer your perspectives on this. During the proceedings of this case, was divinity guiding you? Was there any divine force guiding you?
See, I mean, I don't see any reason why there should be any controversy about divinity guiding us. Because we are in the land of divinity. We are in a Sanatana Bhumi. So, to believe in divinity is no crime. In fact, it's a constitutional fundamental right for every individual, irrespective of whether he chooses to take an office or not. So, I think conscience is divinity. And if a judicial conscience is guiding a person in a position of constitutional office, what is wrong? That is exactly what they are expected to do under their oath. And then I think ignorance is the yardstick of criticizing anyone who actually has acknowledged that divinity was guiding them. Because if you are belonging to a worldview of opium being the only yardstick of measuring others, and then probably then your worldview will be delusional, and it is delusional. I think I think should answer this issue.
Yes, sir. Anirudh, sir, any perspective?
Of course, I mean, see, you won't be part of such a case unless and until the divine has blessed you. Right? So, I mean, our seniors might have deserved that, but we were there only because of blessings of the divine. And one of the questions that you asked, I forgot to answer, is how to look at the book for students of law and practicing lawyers. See, any person going through the book would find out what the legal profession is. Any person before entering the law profession can go through this book and find out how lawyers work. In fact, that was also the aim. We wanted to communicate how a case is constructed, how a plaint is made from scratch. what to plead, what not to plead, how cross-examination is done, why people don't ask question, what is expert evidence, how expert evidence is commissioned, right? And how experts are to be questioned or not questioned. Because one of the things also is of cross-examination is that you should not ask too many questions, because if experts are there, they can improve on their version. What is to be asked is equally important than what is not to be asked. Mr. Parasan used to say, if you ask the right question, you'll get the right answer. If you ask the wrong question, you get the wrong answer. If you ask this question, can I remember God while I am smoking? The answer would be yes, please remember God while you are smoking. If the question is, can I smoke when I am remembering the God or praying? The answer is no, please don't smoke while praying or remembering the God, whether it's, a temple, church, or you are doing your namaz or whatever. Please don't do that. So how you approach a case, what questions, what perspective do you take a case is very important. How you construct the case is very important. What to plead, what not to plead is very important. How to arrange the factual matrix is very important. So our aim was to connect to the students, law students and new lawyers, and to give them into an insight as to what this profession is about. And if you are entering this profession, then how to, look at the legal facts and the, law points. So that was the aim.
Right, sir. Thank you so much for answering all the questions. I hope that I was able to communicate what we asked in our questions, what we were aiming towards, because the aim was to understand civilizational issues from this verdict and also to understand your perspectives on the same. Now we open the floor to the audience questions. Any questions from the audience? So we have 4 and we might be able to ask all of them. 5. Let's start from there. Lady sitting there, please.
Namaste, sir. I think Ram chose every word to be written by Shri Anirudh Sharma and Shri Sridhar Potaraju. I was very fascinated by how you the infinite consciousness, Paramatma ko aapne understandable and effectively जीवात्मा के लिए आपने convert करा. Like we are always the whole life we are taught कि जीवात्मा को इतना expand करो, इतना flexible बनाओ कि आप परमात्मा से कि resonate हो जाओ. But you did the other way around, which is very difficult when we have rigid and small brains. So kudos to that. मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा. I do not have a question. Lots and lots of blessings and good wishes. आपके पास already Ram का blessing है. What else could I say? But yes, I would like to ask a light-hearted question. On which aspect were you very stern, and on which aspect you were kind of flexible? During the whole of the case, on any aspect where you were kind of कि चलो, we can accommodate this view, we can accommodate this word, and on which aspect you were like, this is the final word?
See, the final word was on the fact that our senior, Mr. Parasan, was very clear that we are winning the case. There was no accommodation of any other viewpoint on this. The moment you would say anything, he would become jittery. He would just, get up and give a stare to anyone. And we were very flexible with the fact that the opposition can argue any point. We have enough evidence, right, to prove our case. Evidence already decided by the Britishers, evidence already decided by the Christian missionaries, right from writing from 1608, by independent Christian missionaries and European travelers passing through India and Ayodhya. So we were, very clear about it, and the whole team was ready. What I mean by whole team is Mr. Parasan and the other seniors to, encounter any challenge from the other side.
Let me give you another insight to this. We had a 92-year-old veteran who was leading us, and towards the fag end of the hearings, we were all exhausted physically. Mentally, we were very energetic though. And I think this generation would not have experienced somebody with a memory of what Parasan sir has at 92. So there were instances where he would say, in legal propositions, law students and advocates would understand that there is a judgment on this proposition. So please pick it up. So he would say at the end of the day around 8 o'clock or 8:30 or 9 o'clock. So that was a jittery moment. To now, अब ये कहाँ से ढूंढेंगे? रात को 8 बज गया है. And then the funnier moment was that our own P.V. Yogeshwaran, who had the privilege of holding the wakalat for Ram Lala himself, would actually stand up, thump the table and say, "Sir, why are you wasting your time and our time? You just call your Muthu, his clerk, and tell him which book you want, he'll get it." And that happened. And we are all witness to it a number of times. कि हम लैपटॉप खोलेंगे, ढूंढेंगे, निकलेगा, नहीं निकलेगा, हैलुसिनेट करेंगे. ये प्रोसेस का टाइम जो है 8:30 9 रात को थके हुए थे, तो कह रहे आप कर लो सर, सबका टाइम बच जाएगा. एंड ही एक्चुअली वुड स्टेप बैक, एंड दैट मोमेंट इन फैक्ट he stepped back when he didn't expect in all his life. He said, in fact, his father himself was a great scholar and a legendary lawyer himself. He would say that even my father never chided me like this. Wait, I'll get that judgment. It was a very, very nice moment, both jittery and humorous at the same time. Yeah.
Right, thank you. Aryan?
Thank you so much, Anirudh sir and Sridhar sir, for your insights on the book. I've just started reading it, but I was moved by the language that's used in the book. The humility that's reflected in your writing is something that I really like, since you were doing Divine's work, but the humbleness and the humility in your writing clearly shows that you were driven by something beyond and something bigger. And my first question is regarding the revival of faith. So as Sridhar sir also pointed it out, that realizing the infinite through the finite faculties is something very difficult. And I think Sanatan Dharma has faced this difficulty, that the faith itself has been questioned and it has not been approached through scientific mode of inquiry. As sir said, that Sanatan Dharma is a mode of inquiry. So how do you promote youth to look faith as a mode of inquiry? Because right now what we see faith as, it is something where the science ends, that the faith starts. But the faith itself can be a science. So how do you see that we can promote youth to look faith as a scientific approach towards living life? And the second is on the elephantine memory, since we are a generation of chat GPT and we are really getting terrible at remembering things.
External memories.
Right. So how would you, like, since you have seen Parasaran sir working and you have worked for him so long, and now you have also been into your professional journey for so long, what would you suggest a young law student like me to ensure that he keeps a bit of his memory alive in the world of ChatGPT? Thank you, sir.
Insofar as the memory part is, I think less exposure to digital is the only way, because I'm experiencing living in this two different worlds, of a digital world as well as a pre-digital world. I think it definitely directly is impacting our memory. There's no two thoughts about it. And the spiritual part, as I said, disharmonies, Sanatan, if you explore, does not give you any disharmony, because it is a scientific process, and the process begins with a question, an inquiry, and an acknowledgement of someone beyond us. So therefore, what happens is, it's a hypothesis that which we begin with. A hypothesis probably which I'm not a science student or a mathematics student, but there is a hypothesis where you start with certain assumptions on a proposition to begin with your research or inquiry. And that is explored and extended further by people of different philosophies. So to just bit Advaita, Visishta Advaita or Dvaita are philosophies where you and your creator are considered as the same, or probably duality, and so on and so forth. So therefore, what we are talking about is microcosm to macrocosm and vice versa, as she has rightly put. The essence of our own worldview. I'll say something in a lighter vein. I'm from Hyderabad, Telugu, and living here, I see a lot of people do a lot of Nirjal Vrat, etc. And I'm a foodie. The thought of a Vrat actually makes me more hungry. So I had to give a very legitimate, morally acceptable answer for not doing Vrat. So I took to faith. I said, मेरे आत्मा में राम भसते, उनको मैं भूखा नहीं रख सकता. So that's where your faith is. If you believe the divinity exists in you, on a serious note, would you do anything which the divinity would not approve? Would you do certain things as a boy which you would not do in the presence of your sister, your mother? Would you do certain things as a son or a daughter which you would not do in the presence of your elders? So that is the divinity that guides us. So it's very difficult for people of different socio-economic backgrounds, because people's existential needs are such that they will not be having the intellectual luxury of doing this exploration. So therefore, a divinity in the form of a Grama Devata or a Ishta Devata or a temple or a stone or a rock gives them that energy which they believe, because it is their faith which makes it a god. It's not the other way around. We are a land which creates gods. And I'm sure you've seen generations of gods coming in here and settling down and congenially coexisting. Unlike West, where one had to eliminate the other to coexist, to actually decimate, to occupy. And a similar attempt was made here, and they couldn't take it away, because for us, divinity is Aham Brahmasmi. I am divinity, you are divinity. We are all part of the same divinity as a part of this cosmos or the creation. So I think that philosophical understanding, which is very essential to anyone in this land, irrespective of the path they choose, as a Charvaka or an atheist, or probably as any other faith also, with idol, without idol. So it is your path that you choose, because ultimately for a hungry man, food is what is energy. Now whether you eat pasta, double ka roti, whatever it is, it works. It's energy for you. Ultimately, we are Shakti Upasakas. What is Shakti? Shakti is energy. So, but the scaling of energy is very scientifically established. In certain places, the energy levels are very high. So people go and do meditations there. In certain places, there are low energy places. And you would physically experience by entering a room that this energy is very nice. And then in some places, you feel tamasic energies. So I think, bhajan clubbing is one, contrasting with the other. I think that's how you experience energy. And then I think the youth is finding its energy.
See, regarding your question, faith as a mode of inquiry. That's quite interesting. Every scientific inquiry starts from faith, that if I move in this direction, I'll discover something. You don't have a discovery first, and then, a faith. You believe that you can discover something, and then you move forward, right? Vasco da Gama or Columbus, they believe that they are going, somewhere, they ended up somewhere else. It does
Thank
not
God.
mean, it does not mean that they had a scientific precision. So that is how discoveries start. Discovery starts from faith. And if you look at it, yoga is now declared scientific. It does not mean that when it was not declared scientific, there was no science to it. Right? Chanting, it is now being declared, or transcendental meditation, it's now being declared scientific. It does not mean that it was only what you call a mythology or a red herring when it was not declared as very scientific. Or for example, take theory of relativity. Just because it was not discovered for so much of time, it did not mean that it did not exist. Science recognizes something. Science does not invent it does invent a lot of things also. But these discoveries, most of them are already present. For example, two materials are combined to make a new material. It did not mean that two materials did not exist from before. You fuse them now in the belief that you will find something new, and you discover. So belief comes first, and on the chariot of belief rides science. And then science fuels further belief that science can be improved further. And then this is the progress when, sometimes the cart is before the horse and the horse is before the cart. But in this case, both move. Generally, when the cart is before the horse, it does not move. But between science and faith, either you put the cart before the horse or the horse before the cart. You are able to move and go to some distance. It's not that when before the apple fell on Newton and Newton discovered gravity, the apples were refusing to fall down. When they used to fall down, they used to go up. It was not happening that way, right? So the intersection between science and faith is very important. Our constitution gives both a duty to go ahead with scientific temper, and also by giving fundamental right to faith, belief, and worship, the duty also to respect these as values of human civilization as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Any other questions? Like we will be able to please ask please ask small questions, because we don't have a lot of time. Maybe 10 minutes more.
Yeah, sure.
Thank
Thank you. First of all, sir, many congratulations for writing this book.
Thank you.
And I hope it will give a lot of insights from the court case, because we have seen a lot of movies court based, and we have observed that how it goes on. Maybe some way around it have been. And since it is about Bhagwan Ram, not Lord Ram, it was about Bhagwan Ram. And there must be lot of questions, cross questionings, inquiries, wrong arguments, illogical arguments. And I think your team would have digger deeper, and it would have been the most researched case on Bhagwan Ram and Ayodhya. And there is one quest which always goes about timeline, that was Ramayana happened 7,000 years back or 9,000 years back, or if we go as per Vedic system or Vedic timeline, the Treta Yuga at least should be around 8,40,000 years back. So did such kind of query or questions also came up, and I mean, you had to refer Vedic system or the modern
See, I think
establishments.
as a matter of a civil dispute for property, we had to establish the existence of faith that this place is Janmasthan. So therefore, the existence of faith is what we proved, and not the faith per se. Existence of faith, as I said, was proved by depositions of witnesses who were present in court to give evidence from their own childhood. People were octogenarians, elderly people remembering going with their grandparents to this place. And people of both faith were confirming that the existence of faith was never in dispute, that this place was Janmasthan for Hindus. Whether it was not or not is a secondary question. Now, insofar as your question as to how does Vedic things and come on, see, there were Skanda Purana and the Valmiki Ramayana which were exhibited as documents to establish the fact that Vishnu had chosen Ayodhya and Dasharath as the place of his Janmasthan. And Skanda Purana also gave references to the directions in which from Sarayu that this place could be triangulated or located from a geographical perspective also. So it is more primarily from that point of view that these things were coming in, not merely from a spiritual or a religious inquiry, because this was a civil dispute before a secular court, which was not qualified into go into theological issues at all.
Okay, so timeline is still a question.
Timeline I'll answer. See, for you, timeline now is a Western concept, it is linear. When an Indian concept, it is cyclical. For us, if you look at our itihasas, timeline has not been that critical for us. We go by a tithi, by the lunar or the solar calendar, and it keeps establishing itself repeatedly year after year. When the Panchang is drawn, it's consistently showing your Surya Graha and Chandra Graha for centuries, and so therefore it is a scientific preparation. So time was understood and actually documented very well for us. And time and historicity is something which is a very Western concept of dating it BCE or CE. You never find something like BCE or CE in our culture. We only talk about the Yuga with reference to the Dharma's stature. Satya Yuga, charo pair hai. Then Treta is 1 leg short. Dwapara, 2 legs short. And then Kali Yuga is 3 legs short. So therefore, our civilization measures more on the values than time and calendar. So that's the essential difference, as I say, on approach to time.
Thank you. Piyush?
Thank you so much. Namaskar. My name is Piyush. First of all, you talked about inclusivity, and when you quoted our veteran lawyer, you said that he said that Ram Lala ke yahan se koi khali hath nahi jayega. That was a very good goosebump moment for me. My question to you is, as lawyers, because that's essentially what you did in this case, what are the things that you took out from this? Because this is a larger than life case, and you cannot compare this to anything else. So on a personal and a professional level, what is one thing that you think this case has changed for you forever?
At a personal level, seeing, how faith can give energy to a human being. How faith drove Mr. Parasan into doing this case, and also the other counsels. That was something we took away, and the importance of faith, how faith moves you. Right? Again, coming to science also, how faith drives scientific discovery. For example, placebo effect is a fact. That's not faith, but it starts from faith that even if you give wrong medicine, something will work. Any, discovery starts with faith. For example, it's not that, the apples refused to follow till the time Newton looked up. Right? So that is very important part of it, and how India lived through its faith. I mean, again, as Mahatma Gandhi writes in the Hind Swaraj, that every civilization fell down. After one attack, one conquest, the civilization was wiped out, faith was changed. Why did India not change? Right? Because here we believe that faith drives you, and it actually drives you. Placebo effect was discovered later. Perhaps faith has a scientific value of, energy, scientific value of giving you a target, a motivation, which releases certain hormones which actually makes you work better, concentrate better, like one night before the exam, right? Suddenly some hormones start coming in the brain and the brain becomes very sharp. It starts remembering everything which you struggle to remember for the last 364 days. So one day is equivalent to 364 days. Or the amount of studies that we as a student and you as a student did, right? I mean, you must have studied more than us, but still, I mean, the amount of study that we do in 364 days is quite less to the one day before the exam, but the mind works one day before the exam. So these are all element of human existence which the material world did not study materialistically, right? So these are not material aspects, but makes you work and achieve your targets in the material aspects, like motivation. I mean, you go to a psychiatrist, you are low on motivation, he will give you a drug. Right, but then motivation can come from faith, from medical element very naturally, through faith, through belief, through, targets. So these are all we took from Mr. Parasan as to, the commitment of his, or Mr. Vaidyanathan's commitment, Mr. Narasimha's commitment, not only in this case, of course, in this case there was more, but also to every client that they encountered throughout their life, or Mr. Ranjit Kumar, commitment, or most importantly, I mean, Mr. P.V. Yogeshwaran and Bhaktivardhan Singh. Bhaktivardhan Singh was in the case from the time he was a student in Allahabad. Mr. P.V. Yogeshwaran, he spent 10 years and, he knew the case and all the facts like the back of his hand and all those documents. And once you meet him, you will never forget him. He's such a interesting person to speak to and interact with. Wish you all the best. You interact with him as soon as possible.
Let me just take this. I think the takeaways, if you say personally and professionally, and I always believed as a Sanatani inquirer that there is no compartmentalization in Sanatan. Because if you see, I mean, purely from a constitutional point of view also, the High Court's motive is Satyameva Jayate, the national motto, and the Supreme Court's motto is Yato Dharmas Tato Jaya. So how can you have different things in your personal life and professional life? So the takeaways is, like, if you actually as a person are pursuing your truth and your dharma in all aspects and all dimensions of life, then probably we can go back to Satya Yuga. Otherwise, we are in where we are. So that's my takeaway, in the sense that the experience of ultimately Ramji making it here in this time, in the Kali Yuga, is by following the Kala Dharma of going to a court of law and getting his decree for his position.
Thank you, sir. Last question. We'll be able to hear you.
So I have two questions. First is, what makes Ram a unifying symbol rather than a majoritarian one, and what keeps the light from them? Okay, like we had discussed, that is a place of Ram and no one will go away empty-handed. So it's regarding that. And second question is, like Aditya said in the earlier half of the session, that after the judgments, a new wave of religious interest has sparked in the not just youth but everyone around because of the socio-economical or socio-political changes. So how does the current segment of society or the segment of lawyers that once represented the case for Ram are working on the other temples as well? How they they see it, how they wish to approach it, so that they can claim all the lost heritage that has yet to be claimed?
See, the last part of it is something which probably we cannot speak of because they are still pending before courts of law. And so far as Ram is concerned, Ram is a Ramo Vigrahavan Dharma. As I said, we are a constitutional republic which recognizes Dharma and Satya as the beacons of light which should guide this nation. So when we speak about Ramaraja or probably of Ram as a persona of great eminence in our land, as I said, if you approach Valmiki Ramayana or Vyasa Mahabharata as itihasas or history of this land of people who lived here, because there is geographical references to that across the country's length and breadth and across the oceans also. So therefore it's a civilizational and cultural identity of a particular personality that we are talking about. So therefore it is the characteristics, as I said, we are not a linear timeline zone driven people, but we are measuring time with the dharma which prevails in that time. So therefore when you are measuring time from a dharma perspective, dharma is not a religion. It's a misnomer and ignorance that we assume dharma to be religion, which is absolutely an incorrect approach. Dharma is what guides you to do the right thing. So I think that is what the conceptual understanding which is important for any human being. So because people of any culture or any civilization across the world have a sense of right and wrong. They are not probably even aware of Ram or Krishna or any other faith. So therefore it is that values of that practice of those values by Ram documented in Ramayana is that what appeals to everyone beyond any people who choose to call him a god alone.
See, now please sit down. You asked about inclusivity. Now, how was Ram looked before independence is very interesting. Iqbal, the famous Shair, of course, he later on also supported the formation of Pakistan. Right? He said, है राम के वजूद पे हिंदुस्तान को नाज, है राम के वजूद पे हिंदुस्तान को नाज, अहले नज़र समझते हैं उसको इमाम हिंद. This is how even the Muslims looked at Ram, because Ram is not only connected to a religion, he is Maryada Purushottam. Who does not follow Maryada? Right? In every family there is Maryada. But who is Maryada Purushottam? He is Ram. So that is why he was referred as Ahle Himame Hind. So he is the fountainhead of the correct virtues and the correct way of living. So that is why Ram has to be inclusive. That is why when you go to the Rajghat, it's written, Hey Ram. In fact, it's very interesting to see the approach to the word Ram before independence and in fact before Muslim League came into really its own and after it, which has tainted the post-constitutional thinking that Ram's name cannot be taken anywhere. Right, that's the post-constitutional thinking, professed by a certain section of the population, of the Marxist historians and general historians and those who believed in a caustic form of secularism, which believed that Indian secularism is anti-God. Indian secularism is pro-God. Indian secularism is pro-Ram. As a Maryada Purushottam, he is there for everyone to follow. That is why in the fundamental rights chapter from which minority rights emanate, the only picture that is there is of Lord Ram, Bhagwan Ram. So if you are claiming minority rights, it's because of the Maryada that Lord Ram shows. If you are claiming right to worship, it's because of the, path that Lord Ram shows, the knowledge element that is there in Ram's life. If you are claiming equality, then also it comes from Lord Ram's life. He's equivalent for Kevat, he's equivalent for, Shabri. The kind of respect that he shows to Shabri, no one has shown ever after that to anyone. So that's what Ram is. He is inclusivity personified, and every element of our constitutional norms can be found in his life.
Thank you so much, sirs, for answering beautifully. I cannot expect these kind of answers from lawyers who are mere lawyers. I would like to call you lawyers who are seekers, lawyers who are spiritually inclined, who have a deep sense of understanding of our civilization. And we salute you to your spirit of civilizational values that you have taught us through this book and also through this discussion. So coming to an end, one thing that I would like to speak to the youth, that where we might think that we are not able to communicate to the society our belief, our faith, our understanding of God. Every youth has their own understanding of God. Every Gen Z, I am a Gen Z. I am a Gen Z lawyer, if you have to say so. Yeah. So when we say that sometimes we are not able to communicate to the society, and I just say one thing: give us time, and we'll be able to prove, because in future only Gen Z lawyers or Gen Z historians, not Marxist historians, but Gen Z civilizational historians, whatever civilization you belong to, let's say Chinese civilization, Middle Eastern civilization, whatever civilization, you be loyal to that civilization. That is my request. And also through Young Thinkers Forum, we work on civilizational issues. We do heritage walks. We did a heritage walk at Purana Kila with Neera Mishra ji, and we understood how Bhagwan Indra was coronated there. Nobody told us that. So it is very important to understand, and Delhi is not just a city with respect to Mughal and British ancestries, but it's a city with beautiful civilizational history, and we would like to maybe throw some light on all this as you connect with us. Heritage walks, book discussions, book reviews. And in Delhi, we take the privilege that since we have authors mostly in and around Delhi, we are sitting in Lutyens right now, but speaking the right things, speaking important things which are relevant to our generation. And one also a very important thing, an honest confession, that my understanding of civilization history has also been through books like these, because nobody told us before. Nobody taught us in our history or social science textbooks that, okay, you can look at civilization this way, or you can know history this way. We were taught history as facts that you have to remember and then write in your exams. But now we understand history. I was a very bad history student. In my National Law University, I wrote that 1857 was not the first instance of rebellion.
Good. I mean, that time the syllabus was not revised. Most of
Yeah.
it was wrong.
Yes, and thankfully my law subject had to cover up for my history loss, but that's okay. So now the youth of this country, law, non-law, everyone, we have to come together so that we understand or revisit history, civilization, faith, and we all have our own understandings. Some of us might be very procedural, some of us might be ritualistic, some of us might not be. That's a choice that Hinduism or Sanatan Dharma gives us. So that's a message that is from the side of our team of Young Thinkers Forum. I invite Mohit ji to give word of thanks. Thank you everyone for being with us for so long, 1.5 hours plus. Thank you.
Thanks to our audience for such thoughtful questions, and thanks to our panel for this generous answers, generous responses. I extend my heartful thanks, my gratitude to one and all present over here, to the ISC, its hospitality, its staff, Shubhamji, who is covering us with his camera. To everyone present over here, I extend my heartfelt gratitude. At last, I would like to ask you all to gather over here to have a group photo with us, with our authors.
We also thank Professor Dr. K.G. Suresh, who is Honorable Director of India Habitat Center, for allowing us to do this. He's not presenter, but he's sent good wishes to all of us, and we hope to see him in some of our future sessions. Thank you. Thank you, Shaurya, for connecting all of us. Thank you so much. Let's have a group photo. Thank you, sir. And authors are also here for signing the book. Some of you might be interested in that. I hope that you may have some time, maybe 5-7 minutes. Thank you.